Welcome Dr. Michelle Hone. Michelle has a PhD in nutrition, is founder of the Fit Clinic, which is a team of registered nutritionists specialising in female health. She's built an incredible platform that empowers women to nourish their body and support their health in a sustainable way. She's helped so many women with fertility. So I'd really like to start this off, Michelle, with the question, over the last decade, how has your work in fertility changed with the 360 approach you take? Let's go. Yeah, I'm so excited for this. And just before we start, I'm such a fangirl. I have so many friends, we're the same age, that have been following you for years, and now loads of them are pregnant, and we talk about fertility so much. So I'm just so excited for today.
Oh, thank you so much. And thanks so much for having me. So fertility, I suppose, I think when we look at the conventional model of fertility, that's why I'm really passionate about the 360 approach to fertility. When we look at the conventional model for fertility, it's very much a reactive instead of a proactive approach. So if you go to your GP and say that you're interested in trying to conceive, they generally won't do many bloods. They might just say, take folic acid, 400 micrograms, and come back to me in 6 to 12 months if nothing has happened. And you're a year down the line, you decided to get pregnant a year ago.
Yeah.
And then it's only then that you're looking at tests. So instead, I much prefer to have a proactive approach and have all of your ducks in a row well before. Especially if you're coming off the pill, you should be coming off the pill even 6 months prior to when you want to conceive. And we know from the research, there's so much more that we can do from a nutrition, lifestyle, supplementation perspective to better our chances of conception, male and female fertility. So much more than just take folic acid and come back to me if nothing has happened.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I have a good friend, and the two of them were trying for quite a while, and they had 2 or 3 miscarriages. And it's so funny, the pressure that was put on the girl.
Mm-hmm.
And then also there's 40% male, and I was like, wow, it's amazing the pressure that's put on for such a long time before male testing happens.
Yeah.
Or before we think of sperm quality, because we're just obsessed with egg quality.
Crazy.
So that blew my mind watching that journey. And I have multiple friends that were in a very similar boat.
It's crazy.
And it's like, wow, we need to understand this so much better.
Mm-hmm.
And when you said coming off the pill,
mm-hmm.
that is so fascinating to fully understand that connection to the brain and your cycle actually coming back.
Yeah.
And that's so subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody, you hear that, oh, I became pregnant straight away when I came off the pill. Or some people are years trying to get that connection back.
Yeah. I think the issue is that a lot of us went on the pill for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
It might have been to fix acne. It might have been that we had PCOS but weren't diagnosed with it when we were 16, 17, 18. It might be that we had hypothalamic amenorrhea. And the issue is that women are coming off the pill whenever they decide to have kids. It could be 10, 15 years after they went on it initially. And they haven't had a true period in those 10 to 15 years. And when they come off it, we need to figure out, okay, what's the root cause? What was the reason that you went on the pill in the first place? But because it's just so overprescribed without testing, it's just like, oh, just go on the pill, just go on the pill. And I do understand, the caveat to this is that, especially if someone doesn't get a regular menstrual cycle, very often the case, the reason for that is hypothalamic amenorrhea or it's PCOS. And it is important that we regulate your cycle as soon as we can, because if we don't shed the lining of your uterus regularly, it does put us at risk for endometrial cancers. But I think there's a real mismatch. We need to be collaborating with GPs. We need to be collaborating with doctors. And I completely understand that if someone goes into a GP's office and says, I haven't had a period, yes, they can do testing. If they figure out that it's hypothalamic amenorrhea or if they figure out that it's PCOS, their tools are birth control and something like metformin for PCOS. Our tools are nutrition, lifestyle, supplementation. I understand that they only have a couple of minutes with that doctor, or they can't monitor that person to make sure they're reducing their exercise load if they do have hypothalamic amenorrhea, or they're improving their balancing their blood sugars if they have PCOS. Yeah. I understand they can't track that, but there needs to be a referral process.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. Because I had HA all of my 20s from overexercise and undereating, disordered eating. And when I went to GP with other ailments, because I never thought that was anything to worry about at all, because I was like, I'm just exercising a lot. It'll come back whenever it comes back. Didn't even think your period is a 5th vital sign.
Yeah.
And there was no really issue when they said, do you get your period? No. Okay.
I know.
We're going to just treat the symptoms you have.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with how your body works as a whole.
There's such an issue in that we think that we think that our period is just to get us pregnant. We need our periods to ovulate. But if we think about ovulation, why do we ovulate, or what's important when we ovulate? What happens? We protect our bones. We protect ourselves from cardiac issues. It dictates our mood, our stress. It's everything. It's linked to absolutely everything. So as you said, it's our fifth vital sign. So if you woke up in the morning and your temperature was through the roof or your blood pressure was low, you would go and seek help. You would go to an emergency room. You would go to the doctor. But when we don't have a period for a prolonged time, we don't see an issue with that.
That's mind blowing actually in itself, because I obviously didn't have a period in my 20s, and then I conceived my twins naturally at 29, and I was like, I obviously wasn't trying to have kids. We just bought a house. We were engaged. I was like, this is not on the plan.
Yeah.
But my mind was so blown, because I really did think I would have huge fertility issues in the future. But it just shows like everyone's body is so different.
So were you doing something in the run up to that? Like, so something must have changed.
Oh yeah. So
did it regulate before you had the twins?
Just before it, because I had toned down the exercise.
Yeah.
I went from maybe 2 or 3 hours of intense cardio and HIIT 6 days a week, or 7 days a week some weeks, to like 1 hour 5 days a week.
Wow.
So just that in itself, and my nutrition was becoming more nutrient dense. I was aware I was so fatigued, so I had to increase, especially fat component. And as well, when we look at that and look at hormone balance as a whole, we forget how important dietary fat is in this whole process. And I love that you're the same page as me with nutrient dense nutrition and nourishing the body, and understanding how important that is in terms of like trying to conceive, but also in general, just trying to keep our body. And I had this conversation yesterday, and I was saying to someone in sauna, of course, all conversations happen in sauna. And I was like I train, my intensity is different depending on my cycle. And she was like, what? And I was like, oh yeah, like I would sync it to my cycle, because I'm obviously going to burn out if I don't do that, because for my entire 20s, I exercised the same intensity every day. So 50% of the time I hated doing it because I was so exhausted.
Yeah.
So obviously matching and understanding your hormones is really important, but most people don't take that into consideration.
But it's a big thing is like giving yourself grace and compassion.
Completely.
Like we don't have this stable, like I always draw this graph, like when I'm doing a presentation, like men's hormones literally just stay consistent 28 days a month. And then we are just like the London Underground, a total roller coaster. So it's so important that we honor that and understand if you don't feel like hitting a PB in the gym or going for your 10K run, that's completely understandable.
Yeah.
But also it's really good to be harnessed with that knowledge and that understanding, because like there's massive thing that's changed, especially in our luteal phase. So our recovery is going to be compromised in our luteal phase. We're going to be more susceptible to injury. So it's really important to bear that in mind. We're going to burn more calories. So therefore, I see a lot of people coming to us starting as clients, and they're trying to slash their calories, and they do great for the first 14 days of their cycle. And then the next 14 days, they're like, why is this so difficult? I'm like, that's because you're burning probably an extra 300 calories than what you were in your follicular phase in the first phase of your cycle.
It's so strategic though, if you were trying to get into a calorie deficit in a sustainable way for the female body, to obviously adjust in that week. For the luteal phase, I need about 10% extra calories. I need a little bit more protein, fat. And obviously then in the long run, you're going to overeat less anyway.
Exactly.
The body, when you undereat, of course, what's the reaction? You're going to overeat.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow, this is extremely obvious, but most dietary plans are made for men.
Yes.
And it's like, that's just, for me, all my clients, I'm like, you do realize we need to optimize nutrition the most.
Yeah.
The second half of the luteal phase. They're like, what?
Yeah. So we're such sensitive creatures.
Yeah.
So I actually initially, when I started with the Fit Clinic 9.5 years ago.
Oh my God, you're coming up to the decade now.
I know, yeah, July. So I was working with men and women doing CrossFit training, and I started to specialize in women because, like, not in a bad way, no offense, Dan, but men are so boring. They're so boring to work with. It's just so basic. Whereas if women coming to us and you're like, I don't have a period, or I have like my period's only coming every 45 days, or and I'm like, oh my God, come in, let's work together. Yeah.
And that's it. Like, I love now that you can see with approaches that become more all encompassing, you can see, okay, yes, we can nail nutrition, we can do our exercise, blah, blah, blah. But if we're not doing the other pieces of the puzzle, like the regulation part, useless. And you're the same now. You're like understanding spiritual rest, and that is just as important as all the physical stuff.
Yeah, it really is.
And like that now I think is groundbreaking, but people are still like, okay, I'll do this 12-day reset. And like pretend I'm a man and slash my calories
I
and
know.
pretend every day is the same energy, when like you can actually use it. And everyone says you can use your cycle as your superpower for productivity if you understand it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like understanding it is the key, but a lot of people shy away because it's like, this isn't black and white.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, as you said, the regulation piece is so, so important.
Yeah.
I feel like we're just like, we're all on autopilot going through life. Just no idea what we truly want, like how to regulate ourselves.
Yeah.
Like it's so difficult. And like if you ask me like what if you had a magic wand and could do one thing for all of your clients, it would be to enable them to like regulate themselves better.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
It wouldn't be to give them like healthier ovaries or better hormonal profile, because it all stems from regulation.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like I spoke about this recently, rest and digest. Like that whole concept is when your body is regulated.
Yeah.
So you can't absorb the nutrients. You can't do very much unless you're able to bounce into the rest and digest state. But what I really, and I think everyone listening will want the answers to this because it's a question you and I get so often, is when we are looking at fertility and testing, and that's the very first tier, people will always say, okay, I'm maybe struggling to get pregnant. What's the first tests I get? Because when you go to GP, it's not black and white. They're not telling you the different factors of testing. And we spoke about, you don't just do a test and like the result says normal. Just talk to me about that, because I'd say you're...
And like there is nothing as frustrating as someone says, my GP said that my bloods are normal.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a couple of things that you need to consider when it comes to your bloods. What bloods are you getting done? So very often people will go into their GPs and say, I want to get my bloods done, or they might even say, I want to get my hormones checked for whether it's trying to conceive or whether it's a dysregulated menstrual cycle. And what I see coming back is a full blood count. I'm like, your white blood cells isn't going to tell you why you can't get pregnant. Yeah. I'm like, that's not valuable information. So understanding the difference between hormone bloods and a blood panel is really, really important. So what I get my clients to do is go into their GP with literally a list of bloods they need done. So like, go through them, Go for it. So again, timing is also important. So day 3 of your cycle. So day 1 is the day of your like first full red bleed. 2 days later is day 3. Day 3 to day 5, ideally, we should be getting our FSH and our LH done. Those are our ovarian hormones and our estrogen. And those are really, really important. They need to be within range. The next is, well, like when I say within range, like ideally kind of in around 5 to 7 on that range. Ideally they should be in ratio to each other. And then you've got your other one that's really important. What day you get it done is your day 21 progesterone test. The reason I say day 21, quote unquote, is because I actually looked this up last night. Only 13% of women get their periods every 28 days. Which means that only 13% of people will ovulate on day 14. So the day 21 progesterone test, the reason it's a test that you get done 7 days after you've ovulated. The reason for that is we produce progesterone after we ovulate and it peaks 7 days later in the blood. But the issue, as I said, is a lot of women don't ovulate on day 14. Yeah. So I call this the 7-day post peak test. So basically look at your signs of ovulation. We can chat about that a little bit later on. Look at your signs of ovulation and count forward 7 days. And that is when you should get your progesterone tested. The other one is thyroid health. So this is really, really important, getting your full thyroid panel done. So we have a really important hormone called TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. And if TSH is high, it means we have low thyroid function, or if it's low, it means we have high thyroid function. So it's kind of confusing because it's in reverse. Yeah. The way I remember it is if it's low, it means it. Actually, no, I'm not even going to explain that. It actually makes it more confusing. It's the weird way that I remember it in my head. So what's really important about TSH is you could get anything over 4.5 when it comes to TSH is going to be classed as low thyroid function. So, but what's really interesting is if you are trying to conceive, it needs to be 2.5. It can't be any higher than 2.5. So I very often get clients who say, oh, the GP always told my thyroid is normal, and I'm looking at it and it's 3.5. Yeah. Which puts you at risk for pregnancy loss. Yeah. Which is really, really scary. So it's really important that when you go into your GP, you tell them, I'm trying to conceive. And they should know that, okay, if I'm looking at this woman's test results, her TSH needs to be no higher than 2. Her TSH needs to be no higher than 2.5. So that's something that was overlooked when I had my miscarriage. And it was only when I delved into it and looked back through the results that I was like, oh my God, my TSH was 3.5.
Yeah.
Like, is this the reason that I had my pregnancy loss? And that's why I became so passionate about what I do. So sidetrack there. So the next one to look at is prolactin. We need to make sure that's sub 500. A really important factor when it comes to testing prolactin. You can get it tested any day of your cycle, but timing of the day is important. So you should be getting progesterone or your prolactin tested in and around 3 hours after you wake. And no sex, no coffee, no nipple stimulation the morning of. And no, if you shouldn't be rushing to the GP to get it done. That's stress. Because stress is going to, it's really, really susceptible to the response from stress. So no stress the morning that you're getting it tested. So prolactin is a real tricky one. Like sometimes I can have people that will come in and their prolactin is 700 and then we get it tested under the correct pretenses.
Yes.
Like not stressed the morning of, no sex, no orgasms, no coffee. After 3 hours after you wake and their prolactin is fine.
It's so funny. So I've had more than ever in the last year people talk about high prolactin, having high prolactin, which is interesting. And looking at like the last decade of how the landscape has changed so much in fertility with like we're rushing more, there's more endocrine disruptors in the environment. We'll get into all that.
But like this is like your body communicates with you. The issue with prolactin is it'll very often, so it responds to cortisol. When cortisol is elevated, it's going to elevate as well. And very often elevated prolactin can knock out your cycle because prolactin is your hormone that enables you to lactate to produce milk. So it's almost like, it's like your Mother Nature's contraception. So when you're breastfeeding, for most people, don't use it as a form of contraception, please. A friend of mine actually got pregnant like 4 weeks postpartum while she was exclusively breastfeeding. Oh,
you always hear this.
And I'm like but also I'm like, who's having sex 4 weeks after they have a baby? Like, who are these people? But anyway, so she has Irish twins, as they call them.
But there's so many of them out there.
I know. Like, wow. So yeah, I don't know what they should be doing. But anyway, so prolactin is normally a natural contraception. It's basically your body's way of being like, you're feeding this human. You don't need another human to add into the mix. But there are some people who will literally be exclusively breastfeeding and still get their period. So what it does is it stops your period. So if you're stressed and you've elevated prolactin and it kicks out your cycle, and your body is telling you, I have no period. It's communicating. It's literally screaming at you. When you reach
red
a point,
flag, like in the air.
When you reach a point where you don't have a period, that's your body screaming at you.
Yeah. And it's funny because I breastfed my twins for 2 years and after 1 year I got my cycle back and I was like, excuse me, why is this back already?
How long after?
1 year.
Okay.
So like halfway there.
So did you night wean?
No.
Had you stopped feeding them in the middle of the night?
It was probably less at that point. Yeah, I was probably, they just started to sleep then actually. Yes, yeah. So it made total sense, but I was still like, wow. Because
I know.
That's another thing to talk about. And I think a lot of people realize after you have kids, your cycle changes. As in, you'll notice PMS is a bit different.
Yeah.
And that's actually a really interesting one to talk about because why does that happen? Why now a lot of my friends will say, oh my God, I have such PMS rage. And I'm like, okay, first of all, you have kids now. Yeah. So there's more stressors.
100%. Yeah.
And that obviously, as we always say, whenever PMS is heightened, usually the root cause is extra stress that is mismanaged.
Yeah, exactly. But it's really common as well as that, is for clients to come to us with secondary infertility. So they have no issue getting pregnant the first time and then they've issue getting pregnant the second time or the third time.
I've lots of friends in that scenario.
Yeah, because they're not sleeping, they're really dysregulated, they're probably not eating properly, they're not looking after themselves. Very often this manifests as poor sperm health. Yeah. Right. So a lot of people think, well, if I got pregnant, no issues and had a baby the first time, why would I get sperm tested again? But sperm is made over the course of like a 60 to 70 day period. Yeah. So it's so susceptible. It's so sensitive to what's happening in that man's environment, their nutrition, their supplementation, their stressors. Are they dysregulated? Are they exercising? So it's so sensitive to what's going on.
Actually crazy to think about. I have one friend and like she's beating her husband with the stick now because she's like, you have to stop staying up late. Like you need to stop. Like they're always getting takeaways since they had their first child because they're just like, oh my God, we're so overwhelmed. And it actually was when they got the testing done, it was the poor sperm quality. Yeah. And that's something that they were like shocked.
I know.
You know, that her eggs were doing well and the sperm was doing bad.
But it makes more sense because they're more sensitive. Like I love nothing more than when male clients start with us, because we've no robust test for testing egg quality, but we have a very, very clear test for looking at sperm. So we have it in black and white. I'm like, okay, just do everything that we say for 3 months, and then we look at it and we're like, that's phenomenal. Like the change is phenomenal. It's there in black and white.
Yeah, it's so responsive when you start to improve the lifestyle as well for the quality.
And this is what drives me insane about people who are told by fertility clinics, say, for example, they can't get pregnant, their partner does a semen analysis, the results come back, and they're like, we recommend IVF or we recommend ICSI. And I'm like, what? I'm like, IVF is the most financially draining, psychologically, physically draining thing that your body will ever go through.
I really want to actually delve into IVF because I actually don't know anyone like in my friendship group that has had IVF yet. The only person I ever met that had IVF was the woman I bought all my secondhand twin stuff from. And she had IVF to have her twins.
Okay.
And she was telling me about the experience. And I was like, that is extremely stressful.
Yeah. It's
and
tough.
People, I think, really underestimate that. Oh, you're going through IVF, like great. But actually, there's so many layers of understanding we need to know before you make that decision.
Yeah, it's really tough. So for me, it's so important that we know all of the information. So if someone is told the male partner has the male factor for fertility issue, they have low count, or they have low morphology, or they have an issue with motility, do not, please, like if you're listening to this, if you take one thing from this podcast, do not go straight for IVF if you're told that you have if your partner has sperm poor, because realistically it's the women listening to this podcast, probably not the men. If your partner's told they have poor sperm health, do not go straight for IVF, because there is so much that we can do. As we said, it's so sensitive to our changes in our environment, to our changes in our nutrition. So why would you go into IVF straight away?
Yeah.
So what was that? What was the initial question? Sorry.
Just more about understanding the process of IVF and how the body may or may not respond well to it. Because we talk about, we've done lots of rounds of IVF.
Yeah.
Like, what is the rationale behind, or the reasoning behind it may not working?
So the issue I see with a lot of people going for several rounds of IVF is, what are you doing differently for all these rounds? So when we have fertility issues, it's a case of an issue with the egg, it's an issue with the sperm, or it's an issue with the lining, and an issue with the environment within the uterus. So I have such an issue with people going for round after round after round, because you're doing it with the same cards. You're playing the game with the same cards. So it's so important that we take a step back and say, okay, we need to put you on, or like what I call egg and sperm boot camp. We need to take you and put you into boot camp, nutrition, exercise, lifestyle supplementation, and improve your egg health, improve the health of your lining, improve sperm health. And then we go for another round of IVF, because
which makes total sense. Like, you're retaking a test. You're obviously going to study differently.
Exactly.
You know,
that's, oh my God, 100%. I'm definitely going to steal that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
But I did say that to someone recently, like, I had a client trying to conceive, and I was like, we need to continuously optimize our approach now. You know, this is a very subjective thing. We're doing a bit of trial and error with what works really well for you, especially in the realm of regulation. Like, me and you could have the same regulation routine every day, but it may be more effective for you than me, and vice versa. So you're finding your own tools continuously. And that's another thing I assume is a pet peeve of yours, when someone says, just like forget about it and relax, and then you'll get pregnant, no problem. And that's like absolutely killer, because how do you just forget about something you desperately want?
It's literally like, don't think about a red bus.
Exactly.
I'm like, of course you're going to think about a red bus. And it's so anxiety inducing to be like, oh my God, the reason I'm not getting pregnant is because I'm anxious. You're going to be more anxious. You're like, oh my God, you're anxious about being anxious.
Oh, let me just get a lobotomy and completely forget that I really want children. Like, it's bananas when you think about it. Just forget about it. Just forget about it, and you'll conceive.
It's really patronizing. And everyone's heard that story. It's like, oh, well, I had a friend, or I know someone who tried for 10 rounds of IVF, and then the minute they stopped, they got pregnant. But like, everyone's heard that story, but like, it's not helpful. It's like, give the person the tools. Yeah.
I was just thinking how important it is to realize we don't need to try and forget about something we desperately want. We need to employ regulation tools.
Exactly. If you can't remove the stressor, of course you can't remove, as you said, you can't have a lobotomy and forget that you've been trying to have a baby for the last 3 years. If you can't remove the stressor, you need stress management strategies. You need to learn regulation tools.
Absolutely. And I think it's such a nuanced and new thing as well, that people are like, now, me and you had a conversation before this, and we were talking about, like, you know, spiritual journeys and ceremonies and that kind of thing. And okay, we don't need to completely go into that realm, but we do.
It doesn't have to be totally.
Doesn't have to be.
They don't have to turn into witches.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about it completely like healing our childhood trauma, but we do need to talk about like the regulation tools you could do consistently daily, and how the smallest things can be highly effective, especially like we always talk about the busy lady disease. Like we're in an artificial environment, so we do need to employ tools to counteract.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, massively underestimated. And people think, oh, if I do a bit of deep breathing and have a bath every month, I'll be grand.
I know.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, we're delving into this in terms of like we're habit stacking it. We're doing it different times of the day.
Yeah. I feel like you're really good at this. I'm like, will you be my coach? I'm so bad at it. I'm like, I have 2 kids. Well, I know mine are.
But that's my survival. If I do not walk the walk and consistently do this, I would crumble.
Yeah. You're like I have a 3-year-old, a 10-month-old. And I'm running 2 businesses. Like it's so hard. It's so hard for me to stay regulated.
Yeah, but that's exactly it. Like you are an example of somebody high functioning and doing it.
Sometimes I think I thrive in chaos. Like, what does that say about me?
Oh, well, let's go into our childhood trauma, Michelle. I'm the same. I feel so calm when everything's chaotic. I'm like, this is great.
Yeah. But no, you're so right. Like learning to regulate yourself. And then another thing is learning the person that you are. Like, are you introverted? Are you extroverted? I thought that I was extroverted because I love being around people. I love talking to people.
Yeah.
But it was actually only lockdown that made me realize I am the most introverted person you will ever meet. Because if I have a social event, I need to be on my own for like a long, especially if it's like a big social event.
Yeah.
We did Wellfest. Bear in mind I was 7 weeks postpartum as well. But we did Wellfest for the whole weekend. And when I say I couldn't function for 10 days afterwards. I was just so dysregulated. So I've now learned, don't overcommit yourself. You don't have to fill your social. But this is the thing, we follow everybody else. Yeah. Everyone's doing these social events. Everyone's meeting their friends over Christmas. I had the best Christmas ever because I did so little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's it. Your social battery postpartum is a very different scenario for even 2 years.
Yeah.
Like you could not drag me outside the house 2 years postpartum. Then like year 3, I was like, okay, we're back.
Yeah.
But your social battery changes.
Yeah.
And it changes depending on the stressors around you.
100%.
You know, like, so you have to take that into consideration. And that's the thing, like we all say comparison is the thief of joy. I had to unfollow this Irish influencer because she fucking bounced back from her pregnancy. You probably know who I'm talking about. Literally took like 1 week.
You can tell me off
and she
air.
was back wearing like, you know, tight dresses, going running.
I know, but Instagram isn't real.
I was like, this is
And what is she trying to prove?
Yeah, but there's just so many elements.
She's trying to like make people like you feel bad.
I was wearing like a t-shirt and Fat Man pants for 2 years. But like that was the thing. If you let that infiltrate into your mind, like you're up for a really miserable life.
Yeah. And as well, you have to remember our phones, our social media is like an extension of our life.
Yeah.
So press the mute button, press the unfollow button.
Yeah.
If you like, be really mindful, look at your phone, look at your Instagram feed, your TikTok feed, whatever it is. And if you get any reaction, if you feel any kind of negative emotion towards seeing someone on social media, mute them or unfollow them.
Yeah. I've unfollowed so much people.
Sometimes I do a call.
I do
it's so therapeutic.
It's so therapeutic. Like literally when you press unfollow, it's like,
oh yeah.
God.
Yeah.
That person was triggering me every day.
Yeah, because you're letting them into your life.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah. And it's so funny. Like when you do meet people, for example, in the podcast, I already feel like I fully know them if I've been following them for a long time, especially if it's more of like an influencer. And that just shows the impact it has on you when you follow someone.
Yeah.
So you're actually taking in little aspects of their life, continuously comparing yourself to what they do. And that's especially, I really notice that when I follow like male personal trainers. Because usually for them, it's quite straightforward in terms of making routine and sticking to it. And that's kind of annoying, actually.
Yeah, it is. But no, you take snippets of someone's life and then you create this narrative and this story. Yeah.
Oh, completely. I'm completely going round now, but I really want to get this in and not forget it. This is like so important to understand this. When we look at the pill, and we touched on it earlier on, talk to me about fully understanding what it does to the body, even regardless of fertility, but what it actually does to your body, because you hear it probably a lot as well. People say, oh, I'm so attracted to a different person when I come off the pill. Like, how is it with your brain chemistry, with your hormone balance? Like, what's it actually doing to the body? Yeah.
So what it does is it switches off your own hormones.
Yeah.
So when like our entire cycle, so what happens is when we ovulate, how we ovulate is our brain produces 2 hormones, FSH and LH, and they communicate with our ovaries. and FSH and LH basically tell our ovaries to produce estrogen and to ovulate. And when we ovulate, we feel really good. We feel energized. We feel our hormones are in a good place, and we are fertile during that period. Obviously, we ovulate. Our sex drive is through the roof because we get a peak of testosterone as well. And then as we come towards our luteal phase, we're going to get a dip where our progesterone is going to peak. That's going to make us feel a little bit kind of calm. If we make enough progesterone, that's really important. We can talk about that as well. If we make sufficient progesterone, we'll feel really good. If we don't make sufficient progesterone, that's when we get really bad PMS. But during that phase, you kind of feel a bit more insular. You just want to stay in. Maybe you don't want to socialize. And then as your progesterone and your estrogen both drop, you'll get your period. Yeah. So there's so many things fluctuating. There's so many natural things happening in our body that are driving our emotions, driving our mood, and that all gets shut down.
Yeah. It's incredible to think about it, isn't it?
Yeah. It's scary.
It is terrifying, actually, especially when, like me, probably a lot of your friends have been on it for like over a decade now.
Yeah.
And you're trying to, like, the connection was severed between the brain and the body.
Yeah.
And it's like you're trying to reshape and make that connection.
You're
again.
relearning who you are.
You're literally relearning who you are.
Because you don't really know who, like, it sounds a bit traumatic and maybe people listening to the are like, oh my God, don't freak out. But like you don't. Like, how can you know, like your mood isn't your own.
Yeah.
Like it's not being dictated by your own hormones. It's being dictated by artificial hormones.
Yeah.
So we don't know the science. Like there's like obviously anecdotal evidence, or there's a lot of anecdotes going around about not being attracted to the same people when you come off the pill, your sense of smell changing. We don't know the actual science behind why that's happening.
It is
but
interesting.
It's so
though.
interesting.
Yeah, when you look as well, like when you ovulate, you are attracted to not the bad boy, but the guy with all the testosterone. They are extremely appealing. But then in your luteal phase, you want to run from them. They're like danger, danger.
Yeah.
You want that like nice solid man.
Yeah.
And I find that so fascinating that then you're obviously taking out ovulation. So you're obviously attracted to a different person in a lot of ways, like what your body craves. Because we're primal in a lot of ways where we just want someone with high testosterone that's going to impregnate us.
Yes, exactly.
You know, very simple.
I know.
What your body wants. So it's really fascinating that there probably is truth in it if you think about it in that aspect, that of course you're going to be attracted to a different type of man.
Yeah.
And, you know, you hear that story, I wasn't attracted to my partner anymore when I come off the pill.
But is it a case that your body is trying to just get pregnant? It doesn't care about, so like if you think about it, sorry, now that I think about it, we're going to make a little theory here, but your progesterone peaks after you ovulate. Progesterone is pro-gestation. If you break down the word, it's promoting pregnancy. Gestation means carrying a baby. So when your progesterone is high, it makes sense that all of a sudden maybe you're attracted to someone that's more nurturing, that's going to look after you
bringing
and your baby.
Stress.
But prior to that, you're just trying to get pregnant. Doesn't matter who it is.
Oh my
Do you know
gosh.
What I mean?
Yeah, that's a theory now. We need to flesh that one out someday. Because that's it. When we think about progesterone as well, there's so much people functioning in this day and age with very low levels of it because of like this day and age, this what we think is normal, like me and you running businesses, kids, all the things happening. And we're operating on a low progesterone level, which of course means PMS is going to be more heightened.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really interesting to look at that, because just alone, and I always think about this, how fascinating it is, we're probably down a half an hour sleep a night if you're a parent and you have a job, right? Because you just have stuff to do. Yeah. So that deficit of a few hours of sleep a week is quite stressful on the body. That's immediately going to impact your levels of progesterone. So already, just with that one behaviour, the other behaviour is if you're scrolling in the morning, that's bringing a lot more stress into the rest of the day. So there's lots of minute behaviours that will actually mean progesterone gets depleted. Yeah.
Because when we talk about reducing stress to help your PMS, people are like, clients will be like to me, like, oh, but I don't feel like I'm stressed. But it's almost like we need to change it's dysregulation.
It is. And it's physical stress as well.
I know. So this is what I always explain to my clients. So it's not just about psychological stress. It's about fasting. It's about skipping breakfast. It's about training fast. It's about excessive caffeine consumption. It's not getting enough sleep. Yeah. And then you have the psychological stress. And what happens is we have this theory called the pregnenolone steal.
Yeah.
And pregnenolone is like our mother hormone, and it produces progesterone, it produces cortisol. What happens if we produce too much cortisol? We push out cortisol, our stress hormone, when we are dysregulated, when we're stressed. When we make too much cortisol, it steals pregnenolone away from progesterone, and therefore we don't make sufficient progesterone, and that's why we get really bad PMS when we're stressed.
I always think of it like a cuckoo coming into a nest and stealing an egg whenever I hear pregnenolone steal.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's a thief. Like
Yeah.
the stress is taking this away from us. But when you think about that, and when you look at the amount of people and women around you that do have suboptimal levels, but they have high cortisol levels, which is directly impacting their levels of progesterone, estrogen then as well.
Yeah.
So it's like that domino effect.
Exactly.
And you put that so nicely of how it all like marries together, of how physical stress and psychological stress, there's plenty of different stressors. So, you know, allergies alone are physically stressful on the body. There's lots of physical stressors, like you say, overexercising, fasting and all that. So I don't psychologically feel stressed.
Yeah.
But then the other side of it is, everyone is probably psychologically more stressed than a person in a similar circumstance 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Of course,
100%, yeah.
we're spinning like 20 plates.
Yeah.
So that's important to realise as well. The norm for women of me and you, this level of stress, we deem normal, but that's not optimal for the body.
No.
And like acknowledging that, I think there's huge power in that.
And we're trying to function like men.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I listened to one of your podcasts recently, and it was interesting when you think of like the Industrial Revolution meant we have 3 meals a day, 9 to 5 job, and we're supposed to function well on that.
Yeah.
And that like was a big eye opener, because that probably is pretty great for men. For women, the 9 to 5 job, like in the second half of the luteal phase, is not fun.
No.
You know, unless you're privileged enough to have your own business, it's quite difficult to work optimally in that patriarchal kind of construct.
100%.
Which is, I don't have any answers for this.
Yeah, me neither.
But it's just like bearing in mind, I do need to try and slow down a little bit more at certain points of the cycle, and we're so cyclical. Like as creatures, we are so cyclical, but a man isn't.
I know. Yeah.
And that's hard. It's kind of a hard pill to swallow if you don't have the schedule going on where you're constantly realizing that. But a good start off point is actually to monitor your cycle so you know where you're at.
Yes.
So at least you're not confused.
Yeah.
When PMS is like,
or at least you're not being too hard on yourself. It's like, why can't I do this? Or why am I not feeling creative? Or why am I not, like, I get in really good workflow in my follicular phase, like to the point where like, it's bad, like, but I nearly won't eat. I'm like on my laptop, I'm like, oh my God, I'm in full flow state. And that can happen for a couple of hours. And then I'm like, I come out of it and I'm like, whoa, it's dark outside.
Yeah.
I'm like, all the lights there's no lights on.
That's
but
amazing
it's
to know that though.
Yeah, it's so, but it's harnessing the power of your hormones, as you said earlier on, is really, really important. And it means that we can give ourselves compassion when we can't push like a man the other half of the cycle, or for a couple of days of that cycle.
That's a huge thing, I think, in terms of any kind of effective behavior change, or even when you're trying to conceive and actually see results. A huge component is self-compassion, and you understanding the boundaries around that and understanding what self-compassion really is.
Yeah.
You know, and that again is like the word holistic. It's a concept that has been kind of dirtied a little bit, where it's like self-compassion is just letting yourself off the hook. But actually that teamed with understanding of the female cycle and fluctuations is huge power.
Yeah.
There is huge power in that. I want to as well circle back to what we said about amenorrhea and your understanding and your take on when you see the most success trying to get the cycle back. And I think there's a lot of people that have either come off the pill or have went through an extremely stressful period and they've had no cycle for quite a while. Where would you start with that person who, and you know, stereotypically it's the type A woman that's really busy and she's not able to shut down?
Okay. So the first thing to understand is with hypothalamic amenorrhea, basically what happens is we have our hypothalamus, which releases gonadotrophin releasing hormone, which communicates with our pituitary to release FSH and LH. Remember we said there are ovarian hormones that tell our body to ovulate. The issue is when we have drastic weight loss, cutting calories, excessive training, excessive psychological stress, our gonadotrophin releasing hormone shuts down. It doesn't get released. And therefore there's no downward signal to tell the pituitary to release FSH and LH, and therefore we don't ovulate. So where would I start? Like it again, it's a very individual.
Absolutely.
It's not, it has to be one-to-one. Like, so what stresses me out and dysregulates my cycle might be completely different to what dysregulates your cycle. I can train fasted, do 5 CrossFit sessions a week and do those fasted in the morning and it doesn't dysregulate my cycle. But if I'm psychologically stressed, it's gone.
That's interesting, isn't it?
It's so interesting.
Highly subjective.
Really, really is. It has to be individualized. So looking at that person's, what I call like their stress bucket, what is on their plate? What can we change? We need to definitely stop doing fasted training. We need to stop drinking excessive caffeine. We need to, like, I'm not saying don't exercise, but look at the type of exercise that you're doing. As you said earlier on, is it HIIT style sessions or is it more restorative sessions like your yoga or going for a walk or going for like a light run versus like slamming down your barbell in 50 times a session in a CrossFit style session, you know? So looking at like the easiest way to do that is looking at your heart rate. So trying to keep your heart rate maybe even sub 70% for that session is really important. Other things are looking at your nutrition, of course. So making sure, like, we have this kind of gold standard of 2,500 calories, but again, it's so subjective.
I can't believe we're only getting into nutrition now.
I know. So, like, I'm a nutritionist, by the way. I'm like, what time are we? So it's so important that we don't just take the 2,500 calories and just go with that. So a lot of people say you need 2,500 calories and that's what's going to restore your period. Yeah. That's so subjective.
It's so funny as well, the amount of people that have come to me when I work with individual clients and they're trying to get their cycle back and they're like, oh, but I don't want to get fat.
I know.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not. And that was it. When I got my cycle back, I probably did gain 3 or 4 pounds, which is basically nothing. But going from super lean to that did help. But there isn't a need to gain excessive weight for the majority of the time. It's just about optimizing your nutrients.
So people get confused. People think that hypothalamic amenorrhea is caused by low body fat. It's not. It's caused by an issue with energy balance. It's you're expending way more energy than what you're putting in. So you don't necessarily have to gain a huge amount of weight because it's not caused by low body fat. I have loads of clients that have really low body fat and have no issue with their cycle. So, but again, like it's retraining your mind. Like if you don't have a period, you're not a healthy female. You're not healthy. And again, going back to ovulation, it's not just about getting pregnant. It's about the health of your entire body. It's about the health of your brain, your nervous system, your bones, your heart. So reframing what maybe increasing your calorie intake is. And instead, I see a lot of clients who are struggling with increasing their more kind of calorie dense foods. So like your cakes and your sweets and your crisps and things like that. Maybe reframe it to these are recovery foods. You might not class them as healthy, but for you, they're actually really healthy because this is what's going to enable you to hit your calorie target and get your cycle back. So reframing it to these are recovery foods. They're not unhealthy foods.
Yeah. Even around, I think there's a lot of misconceptions around nutrient dense foods. And when someone goes on a healthy diet, they think that's immediately equates to weight maintenance or weight loss. When, you know, that's obviously not the case when we now understand, and this has been a huge thing I've actually thought the last few years is dietary fat, how to get that right.
So dietary fat is such an important one because our progesterone or estrogen or LH or FSH, all of our reproductive sex hormones are made from fat. They're surrounded by this phospholipid bilayer and it's all made of fat. So if we're not eating sufficient fat, we're not synthesizing those hormones as efficiently as we should be.
So interesting to think back about the women in the 80s with the low fat diets, like how high the sugar cravings must have been, how much hormone imbalances there was.
There was a lot of thyroid dysfunction.
A lot of thyroid dysfunction, hugely important, And that's just so interesting, your metabolic function. And a lot of people are like metabolically not working great because of the lack of dietary fat. Or actually they're having a good bit of the wrong fats. And they're like, oh, I'm hitting enough fat. That's probably a whole podcast in itself of fully understanding the subjectivity of that. And when a personal trainer gives you a diet plan and it gives you the grams of fat, the grams of carbs, the grams of protein, your daily calories, that doesn't tell you a lot. You would have to optimize that for yourself depending on your body. Like you are the expert of your body. That's what this goes back to. No matter what GP, gynecologist, endo, whatever endocrinologist you go to, at the end of the day, you understand the body best. And I think there's a lot of empowerment needs to happen over the coming years because people are putting too much weight on letting the expert tell them exactly what to do when obviously a lot of experts are into a lot of different things. So you have an expert that's a vegan, you have an expert that's a carnivore diet, you have an expert that's into this X supplement. And it's just really important to like do your all your research yourself.
I think the issue is as well is it's very like separate. So we have we go to a psychologist for our mental health. We go to an endocrinologist for our hormones. We go to someone else for our stress. When like our body needs to communicate, like you need to communicate. We're not communicating with all of these people need to communicate and come together because it's our body is a whole picture. You can't treat IBS if you don't treat your mental health issues because they're so interrelated. So
it's so interesting now that we fully understand like an all-encompassing approach is the only approach. You can't take anything in isolation. Everything works together.
Exactly.
So it's quite difficult when you have a client and they go to some specialist that tells them one approach in one area, but that's not going to be effective unless they're also regulated, doing exercise, getting better sleep. So it's very difficult to, like, I suppose the tide is changing in that.
Yeah.
But there does need to be the education around very few things work in isolation. Like now we'll get into the talk about supplements. And when you look at people using supplements as, I suppose, thinking that supplements are like the top tier when they're actually the bottom tier and they only supplement all the other lifestyle things you should be doing.
Exactly.
So when you think of someone with PCOS and they take an inositol, that's amazingly effective, but also we need to look at the blood sugar balancing diet, the regulation, the sleep, etc. So talk to me about how, when you work with clients and they need, well, we can all agree on magnesium biglycinate is a nice one to include, but and also actually, chasteberry has been working really well for PMS lately. I find that good. But the subjectivity of it, and how do you work with a client and help them find the right supplements to supplement the good work they're already doing with you?
Yeah. So we very much have a food first approach. So all of your nutrients should be coming from your food. But the issue is that we aren't getting the nutrients from our food, or we're living the lifestyle, living unfavorable lifestyles. And we need to supplement our diet with supplements because of that. So first of all, looking at someone's nutrition, is there anything lacking? Do they need additional B12? Everyone this time of year, from from Halloween until March, needs to be taking vitamin D. Like there's no two ways about it. So vitamin D3 is really, really important. But again, are they lacking in your B12? Are they lacking in iron? Iron bisglycinate or iron sulfate would be much better forms to take because they're not as harsh on your digestive system.
Yeah.
A lot of clients coming to me are on Galfer, which is really harsh on your digestive system. So supplements are complicated because it's not as simple as just taking a supplement. As you gave the example, magnesium. Magnesium comes in the form magnesium oxide, magnesium citrate, magnesium bisglycinate. So they're so different. Magnesium oxide is a complete waste of time. It's not going to do anything because it's not bioavailable. It's just going to go through your system. Magnesium citrate, if you take a therapeutic high dose of that to try and get relaxation properties, to try and help your sleep, it's going to cause a laxative effect.
Yeah.
That's where the kind of magnesium bisglycinate is like my favorite supplement ever. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's the only one I will say, like, this is pretty much across the board. Everyone could take this.
100%.
You know, and the rest are quite subjective. And that's the thing. Like, for a while, I was like banging the ashwagandha drum. And very quickly, I realized it's highly subjective. Ashwagandha's effectiveness. And obviously, there's certain interactions of other medications you can take with it.
Yeah, that's the tough thing about ashwagandha.
That's the thing, yeah.
But again, then it's looking at your nutrition, are there any gaps? And then looking at your lifestyle. Are you running, like all of us, run ragged, run around trying to do everything? So if that's the case, you definitely need magnesium because stress is going to deplete magnesium. Ashwagandha can be really, really beneficial. It's an adaptogenic herb, which basically helps our body adapt better to stress. So if you can change your stressors, we can change how your body copes with those stressors. So your tolerance to stress. So ashwagandha is a good one. Chasteberry is really good, as you mentioned. So chasteberry is really effective for PMS. So the reason for that is it supports our natural progesterone production. And again, like for anyone with PMS, your nutrients that you want to look for is magnesium, vitamin B6, your ashwagandha, things like that help your body cope better with stress and also improve your progesterone production. So it's so individual. Then you have clients who would have really poor gut health. So we're looking at things like L-glutamine and looking at things like probiotics and prebiotics. But again, I would try and get our prebiotics much more from our foods rather than from a supplement.
It's interesting as well when you look at pre and probiotics, just because it's very topical at the moment, probiotic and eating probiotic foods. And I had a client the other day introducing probiotics slowly in small quantities. And she asked the question, will I not just take the supplement? And when I speak to anyone that comes into my groups or I do podcasts with and that specialize in it, they would say 6 weeks you would take a probiotic max to get your gut ready to actually eat the food. And that just goes back to we're actually trying to get it from the diet all the time.
Yeah. And my issue with like buying a really expensive probiotic and taking it for 4 weeks, what keeps that strain alive that you've just paid money to put into your gut? What keeps it alive is your prebiotic. That's what provides the food for your probiotics. So again, it starts with nutrition.
It does. And that's it, like repopulating the gut and people understanding the gut flora and the gut microbiome. That's relatively new, where people are actually copying on at how much that impacts your mental health, your physical health, your absorption of nutrients. And that's actually an area, even with fertility, but in terms of female health in general, that gut piece of the puzzle now is massive.
Huge, yeah.
And I think understanding of like, we have a basic understanding of, diversity of food. We feed the gut to get good bacteria. It's pretty straightforward. But then neglecting the gut-brain axis and realizing even if the diet is a Mediterranean diet, hugely nutrient dense, we're still not populating the gut as effectively as we could if we manage stress.
And then we have the vaginal microbiome to complicate matters further.
So that's a funny one. Whenever this is mentioned, it brings me back to when I had a planned section for the twins. They're both breech. I knew for like 3 months it was coming. And I asked the GP.
You're probably better off.
Probably better off, honestly.
Twins.
I just always thought, imagine I had a section and then the second one.
You mean if you had natural
section like that, two recovery.
Two ruined, about ruined.
Yeah. But I actually said he was quite a conservative doctor. And I said to him, like a few of my friends had said to me, make sure they do like that vaginal swab. And basically what you do is you swab the vagina and put it in the child's mouth, which sounds absolutely mental. But of course, they're not going through the vaginal, like
canal,
the normal canal.
Yeah.
So you want to give them your
That's their
bacteria.
First dose of probiotics.
Totally.
Yeah.
And he was like, absolutely not.
Really?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
He was like totally against that. So I had to let that go anyways. But I just thought, right, these twins were born through C-section, plus in COVID. Totally sterile environment for like basically 2 years. And I was like, wow, we're fucked for want of a better
You
word.
breastfed them, which is really important.
But yeah, the breast, that's why I was so hell-bent at the time on breastfeeding them, because it wasn't easy by any means. But I just thought, wow, I really need to try and do my best now. But actually in hindsight, I could have done that swab thing myself.
I know, yeah, exactly.
I didn't need him involved.
Yeah. Just get a Q-tip up there.
Yeah.
100%. But no, the vaginal microbiome is so important for fertility as well.
So important. And that's not really talked about. Like most of my friends have had sections.
That's because, well, I'm talking about when you're trying to conceive. It's really important as well. So this is a case of unexplained infertility. Like that's so frustrating because there is an explanation as to why someone can't get pregnant. But what's emerging now in the research is that the vaginal microbiome plays a really, really important role in unexplained fertility or unexplained infertility. So
what an interesting area that's so under talked about.
Yeah, but it's only, the research is only emerging now. So the way I explain it is we have our vagina is like a garden. We have flowers, which is our good bacteria, and then we have weeds, which is our negative bacteria or bad bacteria. And what's been shown in the research is that when there's an imbalance of dysbiosis in the vaginal microbiome, we have more unfavorable bacteria. It's resulting in implantation failure, so an inability of the embryo to implant into the lining of the uterus, and also an increase in miscarriage, an increase in early pregnancy loss. So for anyone who comes to me and they have things like thrush, vaginal thrush, BV, bacterial vaginosis, anything like that, or UTI, recurring UTIs, the first thing that we're going to look at is vaginal microbiome, especially if they're struggling to get pregnant, because that suggests if you have BV, if you have thrush, if you have UTIs recurring, that suggests there's dysbiosis in the vagina, and that might be the reason they're not getting pregnant.
And what are the main causes of that dysbiosis for most people?
So there's things like the underwear that you wear. Like wearing cotton underwear is so important. A lot of people excessively wash. You're not supposed to wash up your vagina. It's called douching.
It's actually mind-blowing that people still do that.
Yeah. But a lot of people do, using like unscented, ideally like natural body wash when it comes to washing your vulva is really important. So wash your vulva, don't wash your vagina.
Yeah.
Vulva is outside, vagina is inside.
Isn't that just like fascinating though, that you always used to hear, I don't hear them anymore, about products like
Vagifem, or is that what it's called? No, I'm thinking of something else, Vagifem. But there's
like just now, just for clarity, if you do that, you're messing with the
100%.
Like
It naturally cleans itself.
The scent is going to be worse if you do that.
Yeah, you're also introducing environmental toxins, which is a whole other topic.
And that's actually something to really understand. And endocrine disruptors, whenever I make a video on endocrine disruptors, it's dead. Nobody likes it, shares it, wants to know about it. But I'm like, I need to. I need to put the thing out there, especially with like microwaving plastic lunch boxes, with your plastic bottles, like simple stuff. I moved back from Dubai a while back, and I was just so allergic to air fresheners everywhere there.
I know. It actually is. I think I don't use them at all anymore, to the point where if I get into a car and there's an air freshener, I instantly get a headache.
Instantly.
Yeah.
And that's just so telling, especially like, when you're in a house and they use a lot of bleach. you get a headache or you start to sneeze or cough.
Yeah.
Like it's so invasive on the body, but
know.
we totally normalize, oh, my house is so clean, I use bleach everywhere, or I'm
But Mrs. Hinch, like not calling her out or anything like that. Not that she's going to listen to people became obsessed. I think it was during lockdown, obsessed with literally like all of these cleaning products and like excessively cleaning your hob and your toilet and we don't need, well, obviously in our bathroom, of course, we need more harsh chemicals. But for our kitchen and things like that.
But there also are alternatives. Like you can do a nice job with vinegar mixed with other stuff. You know what I mean? Like there is ways to get around it.
And I'm always conscious of talking about like environmental toxins because you don't want to come across as scaremongering people.
Absolutely.
And like I still have hundreds and thousands of environmental toxins in my life. Like I'm not perfect by any shape, but it's looking at what you can do to make these smart swaps.
Yeah.
Like the first thing that you can do is stainless steel water bottle. Everyone can do that.
Yeah.
Stainless steel water bottle instead of drinking out of plastic, or this, you heard about the BPA myth.
Yes.
So we don't have a huge amount of research on environmental toxins when it comes to pregnancy because we can't take a cohort of pregnant women and expose them to something that we think might be harmful and see how they turn out, see how their children turn out.
Yeah.
So but what we do have is research on BPA, which is why people have gone mad about, the world has gone BPA free. So you'll pick up a plastic bottle and it says BPA free. A lot of people will be like, oh great, it's BPA free, it's fine. What's it been replaced by? A thing called BPS, which is the exact same thing. We just don't have the research on it.
It's absolutely bananas because whenever I say BPA free on a plastic bottle, I'm like, that means nothing.
No.
Literally means nothing. But that's the other thing. With the steel bottles, like that's an easy win. I still have some skincare products that are not probably great. The hair care products. And it's like about slowly and incrementally making the changes.
Exactly.
I'm no earth mother. Like,
no.
I still wear, synthetic fibered leggings all the time. But actually you just reminded me there to switch over to cotton underwear.
Oh yeah, cotton underwear is really important.
That's hugely important.
Yeah.
And even in terms of like, there is research now around different cancers and the amount you're wearing, like the fibers you're wearing, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's really important to bear that in mind. And like if you're shopping, I heard this recently, which I just wanted to become mindful of. If you're shopping excessively on like Shein and other, with
fast fashion
basically,
places,
and their materials are like synthetic and cheap, there's a lot of shit in them, for want of a better word, that we don't really understand yet.
Yeah.
And there isn't the research behind it. And if that's our, skin is a porous organ, we need to understand that.
Yeah, 100%.
We can't hide behind that.
Yeah.
And that's why it's very tempting. And I'm always like, oh, I really want to buy off Shein, but I'm doing my best not to do that purely because, especially for kids.
Yeah.
It's just really important to just be a little bit more aware.
It's so overwhelming, but like if we can just do the basics, like stainless steel water bottle, your Tupperware should be glass.
Yeah.
Ideally.
Do you know what the best investment I ever made was? Now it was pricey, but they're going to have them till they're 18, as I tell them. Them steel lunch boxes for kids.
Yes.
Like they're just, it's one of the best things I've ever bought for them because they don't break easily, like they last forever. And obviously they were like 30 quid a pop, which I was like, wow, that's so dear, but they last forever.
Yeah.
That's even for yourself when you go to work, bring in the steel lunchbox because the glass ones, like they're easy to break.
But also who wants to eat their lunch out of like a plastic? I feel like it just doesn't taste, I don't know.
No, and especially you want it warm food, so you're going to have to microwave it and then you have to clean two things because you have to clean the lunchbox and the plate you use. But
coffee is a big one as well. So like what you're having your tea and coffee into, because the minute you heat up a plastic, it's going to leach those chemicals into your food or into the drink. So having a stainless steel coffee cup.
Yeah.
Also, people just assume that our paper coffee cups that we get in the shop are safe, but they're lined with plastic.
You can't recycle a lot of them.
No.
I was like, one day I put it into the recycle and my mom was like, you can't recycle that. I was like, you're joking.
And the ones that are biodegradable, like there's a whole like Netflix documentary that's going to come out on the recycle biodegradable BS.
Oh my God.
It's a complete...
in 10 years time, we're going to be jaws on the ground. Like,
I know.
With some things, because you have to think now, and I always say this, even I say it to the kids, like, adults don't know everything.
No, clearly.
But there's so much things now, either the research isn't there, or it's just been pushed out and the marketing's excellent. So there's a lot of things where even food over the years, the marketing's been brilliant. And we realise it's like a carcinogen. You do have to be a little bit more dialed in and not take everything at face value.
Thankfully, we're figuring out now that vaping is as bad as smoking.
Vaping? My gosh. I just... My mind is blown because I remember I was a medical rep years ago when I was like, oh my God, I don't want to teach, I'll do something else. So I used to go into GPs regularly. This was probably 2017. And I remember a GP saying about popcorn lung. So he was talking about like vaping and how it was very new then. And he was like, oh, there's going to be so much respiratory issues off the back of this.
Wow.
And I was like, at the time, it was so new. I was just like, okay, mental note of that. Because my dad, I was like, going to suggest him try vaping to give up fags. If you're listening from America, that's cigarettes. I also have to say that. But yeah, it's just really important. All these new things, and this is a perfect example, aren't necessarily okay.
Yeah.
And the testing isn't done. When something goes on the market, they don't, like, no one cares.
No, but thankfully there's mounting research now to show that it's really, really negative for your fertility, for male fertility and for female fertility. Yeah.
Very interesting.
It causes advanced aging of your eggs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's so sad to think about, because who are the main people that are vaping female wise is teenagers and girls in their early 20s.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now that we're talking more about sperm quality, it's so interesting that that's going to be a huge thing in the next few years of people that come to you now that are in their early 20s, they'll be in their early 30s saying, oh, well, I vaped when I was in my 20s.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, sperm is like made from raw materials over the course of, like, as I said, 60 to 70 days. So we can change a lot. We can completely change the picture of sperm health.
Yes.
We don't know if we can change. Like there is a theory that, oh, you can do whatever you want in your life and you can become a heroin addict. But then if you're clean, like 3 to 4 months prior to conception, your eggs are going to be absolutely fine. I don't think that we have the research on that yet.
No. We
can definitely improve things. So like when it comes to our egg health, we are born with all of our eggs, but our eggs mature over the course of like 100 to 120 days. And the way I describe it is it's called folliculogenesis. And when that follicle matures and develops, it is surrounded by follicular fluid, which is like, if you imagine it's like a soup. So what are you putting into that soup? Is it really inflamed? Is there loads of oxidative stress? Is there all of these negative markers surrounding that egg? So that's why looking at our nutrition lifestyle is so important. Like the food that we eat and the lifestyle that we live is so important.
I've such an insane visual in my mind of this soup with like all these toxic things in it.
Yeah.
But that's actually a nice visual to think about, like what soup are we making?
Exactly.
You know, what's going to, because I think, and I heard this when I was pregnant, that like the decade before the pregnancy will impact the quality of the eggs, will impact a lot of things. And I never, ever fully understood that.
But again, as I said, we're born with all of our eggs.
Yeah.
We don't fully understand, is there irreversible damage done in our early life? Thankfully, there was a myth that being on birth control or being on the oral contraceptive is negative for your fertility down the line. There is a lot of research to show that that's not the case.
Okay.
I think what is the issue is that, as I said earlier on, we have women on the pill for 10 to 15 years, and when they come off it, they don't get their period back.
Yes.
But that's not necessarily to do with the pill. That's to do with what we were masking when we put them on the pill in the first place.
That's a very interesting one of the masking. And now I suppose it's more mainstream where people say, like when you have endometriosis or PCOS, it's like you said, a really good analogy. Your kitchen is flooded because you left the tap on all night. And you have like, I think of it like you have a shot glass. And you're using the shot glass to take out all the water instead of just turning off the tap.
Yes, yeah.
And that's essentially what the pill does. You're just kicking the can down the line.
Exactly.
So it's like take the bull by the horns, short-term pain, long-term gain, if you really delve into it.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like there might be numerous ways to do that, from working with the FIT clinic to having a personal trainer to going to an endocrinologist. Like it can be multifaceted. And I think that's important that people bear that in mind. We need to find like lots of different modalities. We could talk for a long time more, and we're gone over the hour. So yeah, I just want to thank you so much. I think people are going to find that so informative, because it was a mix between the scientific side, but also like in practice, what happens.
The chats.
Yeah, the chats, the reality of it all. Yeah. So I can't thank you enough, Michelle. Thank you so much. It was so great to meet you. But where can people find you?
So I'm not the fake. I actually changed my handle recently. So in Dr. Michelle Hone on Instagram, but you'll probably find me more on Horology Hub on Instagram.
Horology Hub, and that's Michelle is involved in a line of supplements called Horology, correct?
Yeah.
And also, your Dior title is because Michelle has a PhD.
Yes, not because I'm a medical doctor. Just to be very clear.
But like that in itself is so incredible that you've put in the graft of a PhD. So hats off. And thank you so much. And no doubt we'll chat again soon.
Thanks so much for having me.